Hi, I'm Shelley from Mrs Baker's Cake School, and today I'm going to show you how to make a fairy cake or cupcake topper. Okay, first of all, I'm going to take some fondant. All my fondant today has been pre-treated with CMC powder. This one that I'm using here is Debbie Brown's Magic Powder. It basically just helps the fondant to harden, and then it's not affected when you actually pop it onto any of the cakes, or if there's any humidity in the air, or if you're popping it on top of buttercream as well. Okay, first of all, I'm going to take some flesh colour. This was made using Wilton's apricot coloured paste. As you can see, it's a really good flesh tone. Next to the white, you'll see it's just about skin colour. You really don't want to go too much, otherwise you will end up with a really orange, sort of fake tan looking fairy, which obviously isn't going to look very good. Okay, first of all, we're going to want to make the head. The reason I do the head first is just to make sure that the rest of the body and the rest of the figure is in proportion with it. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to roll a ball around the size of a walnut. Okay, next I'm going to take my balling tool and pop a little bit of corn flour down. The room is quite warm at the moment, so I'm going to use a little bit of corn flour just on this tool here. What we're going to do is we're going to give her some eye sockets and some shape to her head. Okay. If we go too round, it'll be really cartoon-like and almost like a football head. Okay, so all I've done there is just make a nice indentation on the top edge. As you can see, she's still quite egg-shaped. We've just made an indentation just across the top there. This will give you a chance to pop in the eyes a little bit later. And it gives us some cheekbones there as well. Okay, I'm going to pop that to one side just to let it firm up a little bit. When you're making figures, it's not a quick process. It's not something you can do in 5 minutes. It's something you do need to take your time over. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the body. Okay, we need a bit more than that. We're going to make her a sitting down character. Okay, so we've got a nice ball of icing. I'm just going to put my hands together and push them in as I turn the paste. You want a nice body shape, and because she's sat down, we're going to have her sat so her tummy's just here and her dress will flow out. We're going to lay a dress over the body, so we need to have the front of the body coming outwards so it gives the dress something to flow over. Okay, but we do want to bring her shoulders up slightly. Make sure you keep her back nice and flat. If you want to, you can use a cocktail stick or some pasta to hold on the head. If you do this, do remember to tell anybody that's eating the cake that the figure is non-edible. Pasta is usually the best option because it will mean that obviously if children are having a party, then it won't matter if they do pick up the figure and try it. They tend to more than anyone else. Best thing to do now is to actually size the head up against the body, and I think that's just about right. Okay, pop the body to one side. We have got the sides quite flat because this is where the legs are going to come out from, and the arms. I'm going to go on now to make the legs first of all. She's going to have quite a nice frilly dress, so the legs can stay quite slim. First of all, take 2 balls relatively similar in size, roll them out into sausage shapes. Okay, got to make sure they are the same length and the same width as well. Okay, right. Then just flatten up one end and roll with your finger just above that, just to give her a nice ankle. As you can see there, she's got a nice little ankle. She goes up to her knee, which you might want to use your veining tool, and just push up her knee just underneath there. And just, trying to do it with my hand the right way. So you just want to smooth just under there. So she's got her little knee shape. And we're going to attach it to the side of the body, so I'm going to flatten it slightly here. So when it does go to the side of the body, it's not going to come out as two big fat sausages coming out the side. I always hold up the legs to make sure that they are going to fit on there. I'm going to pull that one back in a little bit more, so I really don't want her to look like she's got big sausage legs. Okay. Make sure the foot is quite round still. You don't want to go too flat, otherwise you won't have room to put on the toes. I'm just pinching just at the back end of the foot, just to give her a heel shape. We're going to pop on some little toes afterwards. Okay, so I'm going to remove the leg again, so I can lay it down next to the one that I'm also making. So just going to flatten up the foot slightly, and then roll so she's got a nice ankle, using your finger to give her that ankle joint. Okay, so pop the foot up, turn it on its side, and then hopefully you can see this as I'm doing it. I'm just going to give her a back of the knee sort of shape. You really don't have to do this part, but I think it's quite sweet. And then because this is going the opposite side of the body, roll the leg all the way over and then flatten it then. If you flatten it on the other side, you are actually going to give two legs exactly the same, and obviously you need one for either side of the body. Okay, so just smoothing that down, make sure her ankle looks round, and then taking some edible glue, I'm going to glue those onto the body. Just a little touch either side at the back there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lift up the fairy. This is a good tip. If you're making a fairy on your work surface, pop down a little bit of corn flour. If you do find it stains the figure, you can actually dust it off with some alcohol later, but it just stops it sticking to the board. There's nothing worse than making a really pretty figure and not being able to get it off afterwards. Okay, so just fixing the legs on. You can play about with them a little bit and smooth them into the figure as much as you need to once they're on there. Okay, I'm going to pinch her foot just at that back end again, just to give her a nice foot shape. Okay, there we go. So her legs are all done there. You want to make sure they're long enough that her dress can come down just before it and hide any of these joins, any of the seams that are here as well. Okay, so that's all done. When you're doing this at home, it's advisable to give it a little bit of time before doing different bits and pieces like the layers. I would say just give it a good 30 minutes just so it can firm up slightly. The CMC powder does work quite quickly in the paste, but as long as you keep any excess paste wrapped up, you won't have any problems. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is make her dress. I'm going to move her back slightly. I'm going to do her toes a little bit later, simply because if I'm laying the dress and things over, it's quite easy to knock the toes off. It's better to do them at the end and let them have plenty of time to dry. Okay, so I'm taking my pink paste. Again, this has been treated with CMC powder. I'm going to just roll it out nice and thin. Because this is a pretty dress, you really don't want to do it too thick. It needs to look like fabric. Fondant won't flow like fabric if you keep it too thick. It'll be too bulky and it'll be hard to actually model and shape. So I'm going to keep it nice and thin. Okay, it's starting to stick to my board, so I'm going to rub a little bit of corn flour over. Not too much, just enough to stop it sticking. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a really pretty frilly cutter. This is a PME cutter. It's actually got the frill one side and a plain circle the other. The large circle is actually ideal for covering cupcakes, so it's a really good tool, and this one comes on its own in a kit. I'm Okay, so push down, give it a wiggle on your work surface as well. This will give it a nice clean cut. You won't have any of the frilly edges where the paste has been cut. Okay, take your shape. Then what you need to do now is very, very delicate, and if you get it wrong, you'll end up breaking your fondant, but you just need to stretch that out just slightly. Because you've got the body there, you want to make sure she's actually all going to be covered by her dress. Then you can lay the dress over, okay, and you'll see that it's just slightly too small. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use my rolling pin, just gently. If you go too hard, you'll lose all the shape that you've got there. Okay, let's put a little bit more corn flour down. Really don't want her dress to tear, so I'm just going to go in all directions just to keep it nice and round. Well, we've got a fold there. Don't worry, that could go on the back just below her wings. Okay, well, we have got a tear there, bear with me. Let's do another one. See, as you can see, it's very, very easy for it to tear. But if you can get this right, she can look really pretty. What I'm going to do this time is I'm going to roll it out very slightly thicker, just so when I roll over, it keeps the thickness there that we do need. Okay, so taking the cutter, push down, give it a little wiggle, and then lift it from the board, pop some corn flour underneath so it doesn't actually stick. Oh. Okay, the frilly edge that you've got on there is simply just to give it a nice frill to the edge of the dress, so don't worry if it loses its shape slightly. I've got a bit of stick on this fondant, bear with me. If you find your fondant does get sticky, just a small bit of corn flour will solve that for you. Okay. And then tease it that way. You can do it by hand if you want to. There we go. So we've got the nice frill on her dress. And it's just big enough now to go over her. Just checking that it fits when it's all the way down, all the way around. You want to make sure the back of the fairy is kept flat, because obviously you're going to attach her wings later on. Okay, so that fits. All I'm going to do now is just quickly whip it off. Take my brush with the glue, add a little bit front, sides and back, and a small bit on the top. You might think that the body on this fairy is quite big. It's simply so that her dress will bellow out, and so it's actually stable enough to hold the head as well. Just going to take that back to the fairy, lay it over and smooth it down in areas. Okay, if you're worried about making it break, you can actually lift it using your veiner tool and then push down gently with your hands. I'm going to give her a nice little crease just here at the front. So I'm going to lift it up and push it down just there. Okay. So that's about ready. Her dress is perfect. It's got a nice flowing shape. As you can see, like I said, it really doesn't matter about the actual shape being lost when you're rolling it thinner. It's just so that it's got a bit of a rounded frill as she's sat down. Okay, next what you're going to do is pop this paste back into some more cling wrap. If you've got a Ziploc bag, that's even better. Okay, next thing I do is I'm going to actually make her arms. Take some of the peach paste. I'm not going to use all of this. I find it easier to take more in the beginning. Okay, right, I'll just take a nice large ball, roll it out. I then look at it and split it into two. roughly equal amounts. And a bit like you did with the legs, what you're going to do is roll them into 2 equal sausages. It's really easy, just some nice even pressure all the way along. You don't want to go too long, but what we're going to do now is flatten the end just slightly, and then the same as we did with the leg, use the side of your finger and just roll slightly above the flattened shape. That will actually give her a nice wrist. As you can see on her hand, your wrist goes right in, so you just want to make sure that's nice and dainty. Again on the elbow, and then I tend to smooth out that front area. This arm is going to be on this side here, so I'm going to actually flatten out this side of the arm. Just keep it nice and long. Then the next thing you're going to do is take a scriber tool or a craft knife, whichever you prefer, and I'm going to first of all cut at a 40-degree angle. This will give you your thumb shape. Any excess, just take it away. This will actually give you the nice thumb shape, and then what you need then is 3 more lines in between the fingers. Now you do want to go all the way through. This is why I find it easier with the scriber tool. You want to go in between every finger so she's more lifelike. And if you can actually round off each of those. It is quite fiddly, but once you get the hang of it, it's really easy to do. Okay, once you've got them all nice and neat, pop the fingers back together and keep the thumb separate. Okay, make sure your wrist shape is still there. If it's lost slightly, just give it another roll. Okay, I think her arm's done. If you find, like I have, that their arms are way too long and they're around the other side and back out again, all you need to do is just take that scriber tool. I use mine as a knife quite often, and I cut mine at an angle, and then we'll just round that back in again, and then we'll give her another elbow and we'll come back up. Yep, that's much better. I might still take a small amount just off that back end. That's perfect. There we go. So you've got her thumb. Make sure your thumb is in the right place. If you're not too sure, have a look at your own hands. It's always handy to sit there and look at yourself as an example of how it should be. Okay. I'm going to pop that arm just there. As we know, I've taken off quite a lot. I'm going to take a large chunk away from the next one I'm making. I'm going to round it off again. Roll it out slightly. We've got the flattened part for the hand, so I'm going to give it a little roll for the wrist, again for the elbow, and smooth it through. Okay, because this is the opposite hand, we've got the thumb there on this one, so you want the thumb pointing to that one. So I'm going to take a nice 45 degree angle just in there, and then 3 more lines for the fingers. Okay, then do the same as you did before and neaten up those fingers. Okay, so now we've got our arms all ready. Let's make sure they're similar sort of widths. Next, what we're going to do is going to pop on some glue and get those stuck on. This fairy I'm going to keep quite simple, so we're just going to glue the arms all the way along. If you wanted to do something with some sort of character, what you can do is you can let those arms dry overnight or even for a few hours, just so that you can let them have some shape. I would actually pop it up to the figure, pose it into shape, and you can either hold that using some foam underneath, which will hold it in place overnight while it dries, or you can actually size it up, make sure it's like that, and then dry it elsewhere in some foam then. Okay, this fairy we're going to keep quite nice and simple though, just to keep it quick for you. You want to make sure your shoulders are at the same sort of height. Okay, now just to cover the tops of her arms, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the excess paste out of the way. I'm going to take the pink paste again. We're going to give her 2 little shoulder ruffles. These are easy to do, you just want to roll your paste nice and thin. Let's get some more corn flour just underneath there. So keep them really nice and thin. These are going to look like a nice floaty shoulder sleeve to the dress. You can leave them as they are at the moment, but I think it just gives it a really nice finishing effect. Okay, I'm using a normal icing nozzle just to cut out a circle. Using that scriber tool that I've already used, I'm just going to pop it straight through so I can pop it out. Okay, so we've got that out. And then I'm going to push it down slightly just to make it very slightly bigger, and I'm going to cut it in half. You only want enough just to go over that top of the sleeve. Okay, that's big enough. Just going to use a very small amount of glue. I'm going to add them either side. If you want to, just to give it a different effect, what you can do is you can actually frill this sleeve area using your boning tool on one of your mats. Just rub all along the edge just to make it really thin and really frilly. Gives a really nice delicate finish. Try and get your sleeves down to a similar sort of level on either side. Okay, as you can see, she's starting to take shape now. Next, what we're going to do is going to work on her head, just here. Okay, first of all, what we're going to do is going to give her a little nose. So just taking a piece of the flesh coloured paste again. You see her nose and her ears. Her nose is very, very simple. You just want the tiniest little ball. And you're going to pop on a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of glue. You really don't want too much, otherwise it will show underneath the nose. Just pop it on. So it's just a nice little button nose that she's going to have. Next, what we're going to do is going to give her a mouth. So what I'm going to do is use the icing nozzle that we had before. Just using this fine edge, I'm going to give her a nice impression of a mouth in there. As you can see, it looks quite cute. What you can do then is take your veiner tool just to widen that out a little bit. So it gives her a nice broad smile. You can either use one of these paint palettes to hold your head, or you can actually do it in your hands, whichever you find easiest. Okay, so we've got a nice little smile, a little button nose. Going to bring back those cheekbones a little bit. Okay, next we're going to pop on 2 little tiny ears. You just want 2 very small balls, and then you're going to take your ball tool, you're going to use the smallest end to attach these onto the head. We shouldn't need any more glue on our brush, I've actually got enough from doing the nose. 2 little dabs of glue on there. Then I'm going to use the balling tool to pick them up and pop them on, and I actually pull them downwards to give them a more ear-like look. Sometimes you'll see the ears on the figure once the hair's on there, sometimes you don't. It's really up to you whether or not you want to actually put them on. I'm going to pull that in and squeeze it in at the bottom. Okay, you just want to make sure that your ears are at the same height either side. Because the head is quite soft still, you can move it about where you need to. Okay, so our fairy is now dried for a little while. She's quite solid now, you can't move her arms, her legs are quite solid as well. Her head is now set on top as well. She still looks a little bit like a mouse at the moment, but I can assure you that'll change as we get her looking more fairy-like. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take some brown paste. This, as before, has been treated with CMC powder just to make it slightly easier for it to dry and to solidify once it's set. I've got this paste nice and warm. I've actually used pre-coloured Renshaw's chocolate paste, and I've mixed it with some ivory paste just to lighten it up, because I don't want to make her hair look too dark and make the character too harsh. Okay, so I'm going to take a small ball of the paste. We're going to build her hair up quite easily. I'm going to take some glue. I'm going to pop some glue just along the crown of the head and down the sides. Okay, don't worry about doing this now. If you do it early, it will actually make the glue go tacky rather than wet, so the hair will stick really well. I'm just going to pop a little bit just along the top of the ears as well. Okay, get your paste nice and pliable. Take a small pea-sized amount, roll it into a nice long sausage. We're going to give a really nice long wavy looking hair. So it's a nice thin strand. This does take a little while to build up the hair, but it does start to take effect quite quickly. I'm going to start just in the centre, let the hair fall quite naturally. I'm going to lift that just over her shoulder. You really don't need to worry about all the hair being the same length. We're going to make it look like she's got a nice layered haircut. Okay, this next one, I'm going to lay it slightly in front. I'm going to pop a little bit more glue just there. Like I said, you can build up the hairstyle exactly as you want it to be. If you want her to have pigtails, what you can do is you can use some of the same colour as the dress or a contrasting colour to the hair. you can use a ball. Let me just show you. Use a ball, take a balling tool, poke a hole through, and this then becomes a hair tie. And all you need to do then is take some more of the hair colour and pop it straight inside. So you could pop them on the side perhaps and let her have a little ponytail coming out at the side. We're not going to do that style today, but it's very, very simple to do, so I won't need to show you. Okay, you'll notice at the end of each hair I'm making it quite nice and fine. I think the top then bulks out the top just as much as you need it to. Okay, this one's a little bit too long, so I'm going to take some off at the beginning where it's wider. Okay, and I'm going to give this a little bit of a twist down the bottom. So it's just more wavy rather than curly. You'll see what I'm doing is I'm actually joining the hair all in the same place at the front. This actually gives her a really nice parting. I'm going to do a much shorter piece now. This is actually going to come down and sit just over her ears. So if you remember before, I mentioned that you don't always have the ears on show once you've actually styled your characters up. This is a great example of that. The good thing with doing fairies like this is you can experiment with hairstyles and then try something different on other characters that you make in the future. Okay, so another little piece just on this side. Using the veiner tool to just tease it round at the end. To give her a couple of wispy bits just down this side here. You can roll some of the shorter pieces just between your fingers and then finish them off. Finish them off on the mat. You have to have very nimble fingers for doing things like this. Right, okay, so that I think is going to be the front of her hair just for now. This front twist, this front strand, I'm going to give it a little bit of a twist, just so she's got a bit of a kinking there. If you want to, you can actually use your veining tool to define the parting a little bit more. Okay, as you'll see, she's starting to come alive a little bit more. I'm going to finish up her hair and then we'll come back and we'll do her eyes. And there we go, that's her hair finished. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually paint her eyes. I will tell you about her wings, which I have already made, just simply because I needed them to dry whilst we're working. All I've done is rolled out some white fondant with some CMC powder in it, and I've used a PME butterfly cutter to cut the shape out, and I've actually overhung it over two of my drying boards. That way it will take the form of wings, and that should be ready just when we finish doing the eyes. Okay, I'm going to pop everything out of the way so that we can so that we can do the eyes nice and easily. I'm going to take my paint palette. First of all, I need to do the blue. This is going to be the iris of the eye. You really don't need very much at all. Just take some alcohol. You just want one drop of alcohol in there. And I have a really fine paintbrush. It's probably really hard for you to see it on the camera here, but it's incredibly fine. There's just a few bristles to the brush. You don't want too much paint on your actual paintbrush. I always dab to the side just to remove any excess fluid that's on there. And then we're going to make the character look quite happy, so we're going to do the circles towards the top of her eye. Going to do 2 full circles of blue within the eyes. As you can see, there's one there. And I'll try and paint the other one in sight there for you. You'll see I've got my hand here, I'm holding it steady just to make sure that I don't go wrong. Okay. Now paint the circle solid just to give it a nice even colour. We need to let that dry just for a few seconds so that we can do the black. Again, just a little bit of the powder. I'm going to mix that together to create a really good black paint. I'd always advise using black powder with alcohol rather than using your black coloured pastes that you use. I do find it gives a really nice smooth consistency. Okay, I'm going to take my fairy now and I'm going to give her a nice pupil in the centre there. Let's do the same on both sides. It's always best to do a tiny bit of the paint at a time. If you go with too much, you'll find that you can't take it off, so you have to, it's easier to go in with a small amount to start with and build it up. Okay. She's quite happy, so I'm going to give her quite large pupils. If you look in cartoon books, you'll find really good ideas for what you can do with your eyes. I've made her so she's looking up and away from the cake that she's going to be sat on. Once you've done your pupils, next thing you need to do is to add on some eyelashes. I'm going to turn her round again. And this is where you use the white of the eye just as a guide. You're going to draw just along that top edge down to the end of the eye, and we'll detail her face a little bit more as well. Trying to do this so I can show you on camera how I do it. Okay, you need to do 3 little eyelashes. 1, 2, 3. This paintbrush is the finest I could possibly get. You really don't want more than a couple of bristles on there. Okay, just find this a little bit hard to do it on camera and show you all the fine details. If your paint starts to dry out, you may want to pop in just another drop of alcohol. Okay, so just going over that edge of her eyes, 3 little eyelashes. Okay, that one's gone slightly higher than I wanted. I'm just going to bring it back in. There we go. I'm going to even them up because the second set of eyelashes was slightly thicker. So I'm just going to even them up so they look the same. And I'm going to bring down a little line just underneath the eye as well, just to highlight those eyes. As you can see, it brings her to life. If you want to, you can add a tiny, fine little dot of white in each eye, but I think she looks quite cute how she is. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that paint palette back again. I'm going to get some corn flour on my board. Scoop a small part of that up. Oh no, we've used the wrong brush. That's the one we're gluing, we don't want to be using that one. So I'm just going to tap a small bit of corn flour into my paint palette. I'm going to add in a small dash of peach powder. This is a peach shimmer powder. And I'm going to mix the two together. This will give you a really nice sort of glow colour for her cheeks. You can use pink, you can use any colour that you're happy with. If you're doing an adult figure, you might want to go slightly darker, maybe some browner tones, make it look like bronzer. Okay, so you load your brush and then you almost get rid of all of it as well in a clear part of your paint palette. You can do this on kitchen paper. I just do it in the paint palette to keep all the colour in the same place. So you've almost put that colour in and then taken it back out again. And then what we're going to do is give her some cheekbones. So just want to give her a nice bit of shimmer on each cheek. Okay, you can build this colour up as much as you want to. It's totally down to you how much colour she has on her cheeks. Okay, there we go. All we need to do now is add her wings. Okay, they should be dry now. I'd recommend doing several sets of wings just in case they do break. They can be quite temperamental. So I'm going to take some glue and pop it just down the centre of the wings. What you may find is you need to actually hold the wings on for a short period of time. I'm going to pop them just on the back of her. Don't panic too much if they do break. You can rectify that quite easy. Okay, there we go. And there's our pretty little fairy. If you want to give her some more detail, you could add a flower into her hair, you could paint the edges of the wings, you can put much more detail on there, but it's all down to how much detailing you want on there. Actually, I'm going to give her some toes. I did say I'd give her some toes, didn't I? This is really simple, just a small pea-sized amount of fondant. We'll run a top line of glue just along each of her feet, and we need some little tiny balls for her toes. I'm going to turn her around just slightly. Okay, so she wants 2 big toes. Remember, those are always innermost when the feet are like this. Got a bit of fluff in that piece of fondant, bear with me. You will find that you do get fluff that comes from nowhere. It's almost like this fluff areas. Just make sure you keep a set of tweezers handy. There's nothing worse than when you've made a wedding cake and right at the end you find there's a tiny piece of fibre that's somehow come from nowhere and got right in the worst part of your cake. They're not hairs or anything like that, it's just fibres from your clothes and from the atmosphere. Let's make sure I've got enough glue. Make sure your toes get smaller as they go down the foot. So you're just going to glue all 5 toes on there together. Just tiny, tiny little fine balls. You don't need to make them look like proper toes. It's all in the illusion. Right, okay. This is a very delicate part of the job, which is not what I'm great at. I've got big fingers. Okay, I'm going to add a tiny bit more glue just for the last one.